everyone, it's Sweets Rose, and today I'm talking about the motion for permanent injunction that Cardi B has just filed against YouTuber Tasha K. After a 2-week trial, the jury has returned a $3.8 million verdict in Cardi B's favor, finding that Tasha K and her company are liable for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and invasion of privacy. The litigation relates to a series of videos that were published by Tasha K on her YouTube channel that date back to September of 2018, in which Tasha K made highly offensive and defamatory statements about Cardi B on a repetitive basis, and despite a number of cease and desist letters being sent to her. This past week, Cardi B's attorneys have filed a motion asking a Georgia federal judge to require Tasha K to remove the videos and posts from her social media channels that contain the defamatory statements that were at issue in the litigation. Tasha K has made it clear in her public statements that she will not voluntarily take down all defamatory statements without a court ordering her to do so. And nothing at this time requires her to take down videos and posts that contain the very statements that the jury has now found are in fact defamatory. In addition, nothing prevents Tasha K from continuing to make false and defamatory statements about Cardi B on an ongoing basis in the future. And while Tasha K has removed some of the videos and posts that contain the defamatory statements, nothing at this time prevents her from simply reposting them. And that would result in Cardi B having to continue to file future legal actions against Tasha K and incur all those legal fees and frustrations all over again. Tasha K has also suggested publicly that she's going to use trusts or bankruptcy to avoid paying the $3.8 million judgment. Tasha K has also made statements indicating that she has moved money around or depleted assets or moved things out of her own name to prevent Cardi B from being able to recover any money from her. So I'm going to pull up the motion that was just filed by Cardi B's attorneys and walk you through that, and also look at the defendant's response. If you're getting value from this video so far, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to our channel to stay notified of all of our upcoming videos. And remember, this channel is for news reporting and educational purposes only. Nothing on this channel nor any of its videos is legal advice. We're going to look at the complaint that Cardi B's attorneys have just filed. The plaintiff is Cardi B. Her full legal name is Belcalis Marlenis Almanzar. And the defendants, Tasha K, this is her full name here, and Tasha K's company are listed below the V as the defendants. And it says that Cardi B filed this action because Tasha K and her company refused to stop targeting her with harmful and disgusting lies. For over 3 years, defendants repeatedly and knowingly published false and defamatory statements that plaintiff engaged in prostitution, that plaintiff has herpes and HPV, that plaintiff uses or has used cocaine, that plaintiff appears in a particular video engaging in a debasing act with a beer bottle, and that plaintiff committed adultery. And then her attorneys set forth verbatim these defamatory statements that have been published by Tasha K, who is a YouTuber who runs a celebrity gossip channel. And her attorneys here are citing to certain places in the videos that Tasha K has posted or certain interviews. So if you see like P534, that means plaintiff's exhibit 534, and then it says at 35, that means 35 seconds in. The next one says at 40 seconds in. So basically, this is how attorneys denote to the court where exactly in that particular video or in that particular exhibit lies the statements that the attorneys are referencing here. So I'm not going to read these statements out loud. But as you can see, they are extremely offensive, highly derogatory statements that have been set forth about Cardi B. And there has been this continuing relentless pattern of conduct where, Tasha K has repeatedly made these comments despite Cardi B and her attorneys sending cease and desist letters. If you notice here, Cardi B's filing actually states that the defamatory statements published by defendants and admitted at the recent jury trial in this case included the following. So essentially, Tasha K doesn't even deny this. She doesn't even deny that she made these statements. Then it says each of these categories of statements was supported at trial with overwhelming and unrebutted evidence establishing that the statements were patently false and defamatory, and the defendants published them with actual malice and with the intention of causing Cardi B emotional distress. The jury unanimously found both Tasha K and her company liable on each of Cardi B's claims and awarded Cardi B compensatory damages, punitive damages, and her costs of litigation. So let me stop here for a second. So in a court case, at a trial, there are certain types of damages. In this case, Cardi B was awarded $1 million in compensatory damages, $1.5 million in punitive damages, about $25,000 in medical costs, and $1.3 million in attorney's fees and costs. So compensatory damages is the bucket of general damages, like to try to compensate Cardi B for the wrongs that have been done to her. The punitive damages are additional damages that were awarded to punish the defendant, because in this case, it was found by the jury that Tasha K made these repeated and continuous pattern of statements throughout a number of videos for a duration of time, and she continued to do so after being asked to stop. She was acting with malice. She was acting with intent to harm Cardi B, to cause her emotional distress, to make her upset. Tasha K even tagged Cardi B in at least one post where she included the hashtag herpes B, to upset Cardi B. The jury did find that this was intentional conduct that was aimed at trying to hurt and harm Cardi B emotionally and cause damage to her reputation. And when you're a celebrity, your reputation is synonymous with your brand. The jury in this case awarded Cardi B compensatory damages and also punitive damages in addition. The jury also awarded $1.3 million in attorney fees because Cardi B has had to pay her attorneys a lot of money to litigate this case, to take it to trial. So even though Tasha K was told on multiple occasions that the abhorrent things they were publishing about Cardi B were untrue, and even though the defendants admitted that they knew that they were untrue, Tasha K still refused to discontinue, remove, or retract the defamatory statements. So it's important to note that even despite filing this court case and sending multiple cease and desist letters to Tasha K continued to harass Cardi B throughout this years-long litigation, as defendants purportedly persisted in repeating the defamatory statements in order to upset Cardi B and drive traffic to defendants' platforms. And that's important to note because, remember, Tasha K and her company are profiting off of these videos that are on YouTube. So the defendants have also made clear on multiple occasions that they will not stop repeating the defamatory statements unless compelled to by this court. And then Cardi B's attorneys discuss and quote statements from the defendant saying that she is not going to stop unless the court issues an injunction, which is exactly what Cardi B's attorneys are asking the court to do at this point. So at the trial, for example, Cardi B's attorney asked Tasha K, unless someone actually forces you to, you are never going to stop repeating these statements about my client. And Tasha K said that is correct. So the only way at this point these videos are ever going to come down is if this court forces you to. Is that right? Tasha K said that is correct. Are you essentially saying that to stop you from calling my client Cold Sore B, my client needs to get a gag order? Yes, ma'am. Okay. And when you say gag order, you're talking about an injunction in court, correct? That is correct. So then Cardi B's attorneys lay out the legal argument. There are certain factors that have to be met in order for the court to issue a permanent injunction. The plaintiff has to have suffered an irreparable injury. The remedies available at law, such as money damages, have to be inadequate to compensate for that injury. And when looking at the balance of hardships between the plaintiff and defendant, a remedy in equity has to be warranted because an injunction is equitable relief. And the public interest cannot be disturbed by the issuance of a permanent injunction. So we can break that down a little bit here. So first, there is a judgment against Tasha K at this point. So there has been a trial. The statements at issue have been deemed to be defamatory, and therefore they are not protected by the First Amendment. Okay? So evidence entered at trial proved that defendants were unrelenting in their campaign of defamation against plaintiffs, both before and during the pendency of this case. Defendants also made clear that they will not stop publishing the defamatory statements about plaintiff without an order from this court. And if defendants carry through with these promises to keep harassing plaintiff, without an injunction, the plaintiff will be required repeated, if not perpetual, subsequent litigation to redress the threatened future defamation. And this is particularly true if defendants are judgment-proof and thus incapable of compensating plaintiff for the harm they have caused, or if the defendant fraudulently moved assets during the pendency of this litigation to make it more difficult to collect the judgment, because then the damages award cannot serve as its intended deterrent effect. Defendants have already boasted as much. So then Cardi B's attorneys quote certain statements of Tasha K, which suggests strongly that she has, potentially moved money around. And even assuming the defendants satisfy the jury's substantial damages award, damages alone are inadequate to address the constant ongoing threat of defendants repeating the defamatory statements. Because once again, as we talked about before, nothing stops them from reposting other videos or reposting some of the videos that they had taken down or continuing to make statements about Cardi B. In addition, the ongoing harm to plaintiff if the defamatory statements are permitted to subsist and be repeated is irreparable. Courts have routinely recognized damage to reputation, which is the archetype form of harm that is caused by defamation, as irreparable. So, as we discussed, Cardi B is a celebrity. Her brand, her reputation, they're synonymous. And the emotional harm to plaintiff that was intentionally caused by defendants, which plaintiff proved at trial, would also be irreparable if permitted to continue. And, Cardi B has spoken about this at trial, about how she has become depressed and, very understandably upset and distressed by the statements that Tasha K has made about her. And so the harm to plaintiff outweighs any potential harm to defendant if they are enjoined from continuing to publish defamatory statements, because the First Amendment does not protect false and defamatory speech. Defendants therefore have no legitimate interest that would be affected by an injunction to prevent them from continuing to publish and republish the defamatory statements. Despite the overwhelming evidence entered at trial and a unanimous jury verdict against both defendants on all of Cardi B's claims, Tasha K continues to insinuate that the defamatory statements are true. And Cardi B's attorneys attach an exhibit, for example, where the defendant states no lies were told on anyone when Tasha K is talking about this court case. So the public's interest in truthful information will be well served by prohibiting the defendants from continuing to publish and republish the defamatory statements. It's also in the public's interest not to burden the courts with multiple damages actions to address the defendant's continuing course of conduct. Then Cardi B's attorneys talk about First Amendment and Georgia law, because this action is in federal court because of diversity of citizenship, meaning that the parties are from different states, so they can be in federal court if the amount in controversy is above a certain threshold, which it is. They apply the Georgia state law when determining a restraint on speech. Injunctive relief to be allowable in the diversity case like this one, the relief also must be consistent with state law, and that is not an impediment to issuing an injunction in this case. And then Cardi B's attorneys talk about how the Georgia Supreme Court has adopted and applied the reasoning to uphold a permanent injunction for defamation under Georgia law. And then they talk about how Cardi B seeks a narrowly tailored injunction. Cardi B seeks a permanent injunction that is not worded more broadly than is necessary to address the defamatory statements that were the subject of this action and that were found defamatory by the jury in this case. Specifically, Cardi B is only seeking to require the defendants to remove any videos and posts that contain the defamatory statements from their social media accounts and to enjoin the defendant from republishing those same statements. In other words, the proposed injunction will only affect speech that has been found defamatory and thus is not subject to First Amendment protection. She's not even asking her to enjoin Tasha K from talking about Cardi B at all in the future, but she is saying that we've had a trial, certain statements have been found to be false and defamatory, and I want those statements removed. I want the videos and posts that include those statements removed from Tasha K's YouTube account. So one of the threshold questions in a defamation case is this speech protected by the First Amendment? And false and defamatory statements are not entitled to First Amendment protection. So you don't have a right to go around making defamatory statements about people. So what Cardi B's attorneys are saying in this motion is that we're asking the court to permanently enjoin, meaning permanently prohibit or permanently stop Tasha K from publishing and republishing the statements that the jury has found to be defamatory in this case. Cardi B is not asking the court to issue an injunction that would prevent Tasha K from saying anything about her in the future. She's not asking for a broad-based injunction. She's asking for a narrowly tailored injunction. And Cardi B's attorneys repeatedly point out that Tasha K's course of conduct has been persistent. It's not just like one statement. It is a continuous pattern of statements saying the same types of false allegations about Cardi B. Cardi B's attorneys have noted that this pattern has been relentless and that there has been a finding of malice and that this was done by Tasha K with an intent to cause emotional harm to Cardi B. It seems that Cardi B does have a legitimate basis upon which to ask for a permanent injunction in this case. This is the defendant's memorandum of law regarding injunctive relief filed by Tasha K's attorneys. It states that the court ordered the parties to research and submit a memorandum detailing the applicable law on injunctions for the court to consider in advance of the April 1st, 2022 upcoming hearing regarding injunctive relief. Tasha K's attorney started out by saying that it must be noted that during the entire pendency of this case, plaintiff never requested a temporary restraining order or preliminary injunction. Furthermore, no motion for a permanent injunction has ever been filed. Cardi B requested injunctive relief solely in the prayer for relief section of her complaint. Then they talk about the case being a diversity action with no issues or claims raising federal question and is therefore governed by Georgia state law. So then they say entry of a permanent injunction is appropriate only in clear and urgent cases where there is a vital necessity to prevent a party from being damaged and left without an adequate remedy. Equitable relief is a matter within the sound discretion of the trial court. Before the trial court can exercise its discretion with regard to issuing a permanent injunction, plaintiff must first show that she has a legal right to relief. Even though the jury returned a verdict in plaintiff's favor, that by itself is not sufficient to secure a permanent injunction. The general rule in Georgia is that an injunction will not be granted to restrain defamation. However, Georgia courts have approved a permanent injunction against libel where, among other things, there was a continuing course of repetitive conduct and the jury returned a verdict for plaintiff. Some commentators would say that, Cardi B's attorneys have done an excellent job of setting forth the repetitive, ongoing course of conduct of Tasha K in regards to these defamatory statements. And there has, in fact, been a verdict returned for Cardi B, the plaintiff in this case. So then they say that the plaintiff must prove that she is suffering and will continue to suffer irreparable harm, which entitles her as a legal right to injunctive relief. In addition to showing a real and immediate threat of future injury, plaintiff must prove that the compensatory and punitive damages the jury awarded her are inadequate as a remedy provided at law. And, Cardi B's attorneys have addressed these points in their filing. Cardi B's attorneys have stated that there is a real and immediate threat of future injury because this individual, Tasha K, has continued to make defamatory statements. She has made it clear that she's not going to remove defamatory content from her social media channels without the court issuing an injunction. She's also made statements suggesting that even despite the trial and the jury verdict in Cardi B's favor, that she told the truth and that these statements are still true. She's been very clear that, if you want me to do something, you're going to have to order me to do it. And Cardi B's attorneys have referenced in their filing at least one instance where she removed a video, where Tasha K removed a video, but then republished it the next day. So, and Cardi B's attorneys have stated that, these money damages that Cardi B was awarded are not an adequate remedy because, number one, we may not be able to collect on this judgment, because Tasha K has strongly suggested that she's moved money around or has engaged in other actions to, prevent Cardi B from actually collecting on the judgment. Tasha K has even referenced, using trusts or bankruptcy to avoid paying the judgment. But in addition, just receiving money damages does not protect against future harm and ongoing statements being made or republishing of statements that were made. As a celebrity, Cardi B's brand and her reputation are synonymous with how she makes her livelihood. Check out these videos and subscribe to our channel to stay notified of all of our upcoming videos.